Hey there, it's Bram Kanstein, and in this episode of Bitcoin for Millennials, I'm talking to Nick Moran. He's the founder and CEO of Intercosmic Energy and developing the world's first feasible approach to space-based solar power through orbital Bitcoin mining. This is a mind-blowing conversation. If you think that mining Bitcoin in space with endless solar power sounds like a crazy idea, then this conversation is for you. Check it out. Yeah, man, thanks for coming on. I mean, we're going to talk about your crazy project today. You are developing the world's first feasible approach to space-based solar power through orbital Bitcoin mining, monetizing stranded solar energy in space. Man, that's a mouthful, but it sounds pretty dope.
Yeah, man, I'm really shocked that nobody's thought of this before in a lot of senses. Yeah, it's the case is there to make it happen, especially with launch costs coming down here soon. So
yeah, that's cool. Yesterday I had a conversation, and I don't know how we ended up there, but we talked about how the main metric for Elon and SpaceX is lowering the cost per kilo, right, or cost per certain weight for the Dragon and stuff like that. And so eventually many people will be able to shoot anything up in space, right? So I think that's eventually coming. But before we go there, I'd love to hear a bit about your journey. I mean, you've described your journey as going from humble beginnings to this extraordinary opportunity. Could you tell a bit about your background and what your life was before Bitcoin and what it's like after being orange-pilled?
Yeah, it's a stark contrast, if I had to admit it. It's interesting when you become orange-pilled, you do see things in a different light. I'd say a more truthful light, especially if you're a student of life that wants to study. Kind of all the rabbit holes that Bitcoin will send you down, monetary history, geopolitics, and just kind of understanding why you need a trustless money and how Bitcoin does solve the Byzantine generals issues, which has plagued humanity since the beginning as far as money and transactions go. But to give you a little background before I got orange pilled, so I had a 10-year career as a refinery operator for Praxair. So I was a cryogenics refinery operator. So dealing with control systems and cooling systems and heavy electrical instrumentation, so many very complex things that you deal with processes that so for me, I guess it's more of like an engineering background to be the easiest way to put it. So what had me stumbling upon Bitcoin was in 2017 when there was the big bull run, when Bitcoin went from like under 1,000 up to 20 grand. And so for me, it was really the allure of like, oh, okay, I can make some money, trading this. And once I got in and, of course, held too long in 2018, and it's not like I was underwater in the investment, but it made me want to study it more. So once I began to study it, I started off on Reddit, which led me to the profiles of Anthony Pompliano and Mark Yusko, which I stumbled into the perfect hands to learn this from because they were so good at articulating it, and they were very consistent on Twitter with teaching people how Bitcoin really works and why it's needed. So for me, it was just a never-ending rabbit hole from there. And I still continued my career as a refinery operator. So as time went on, I took any extra money that I had and I put it into Bitcoin. And it just, having that kind of skin in the game forced me to continue to study it. Like, I need to understand this to the fullest extent. So I'm making sure I'm not literally just flushing money down the toilet. And as each day continued studying it more and more, I was like, okay, this is cheaper, faster, and secure transactions. There's no third party. This is clearly the future in one way, shape, or form. So as I continued to study it and find out that Bitcoin had a fixed supply, it was also backed by energy. So is money backed by energy as a medium of exchange, but also it's better at being gold as a store of value because it has a fixed supply. Once I started putting the pieces together, especially with the help of really bright minds on Twitter, I mean, I didn't do this all on my own, so I have to give a huge shout out to all the bright minds on the Bitcoin community on Twitter. They really helped me accelerate that learning curve to where now I can articulate, easily why Bitcoin's important, why it's needed. And I'm kind of a testament of, as time has gone on, that it's provided me a better financial future, as well as having like full sovereignty of my time, focus, and energy. So I'm not a slave to a 9 to 5. So I've put in over 12,000 hours of study on Bitcoin mining, and all the different rabbit holes with it to this very moment. And little did I know I was preparing myself for stumbling upon a discovery that apparently nobody else had really given much thought of before, is that if Bitcoin mining is the only technology that can monetize stranded energy on Earth, we can do that out in space as well and monetize that stranded solar energy that's in abundance, but also use the abundance of cooling in space in that natural vacuum environment. So yeah, I mean, that's just a long story short to getting here. But I am thankful for my 10 years of experience as a refinery operator, because it helped me understand, really, because that's like the energy industry, right? And Bitcoin mining ties directly into that. So, and learning about, how to run a business like that, and also understand how to make Bitcoin mining, make it make sense for me. So the learning curve there was really short as well. So, yeah.
Awesome, man. Yeah, I just love hearing the stories of how people got into Bitcoin. But I mean, even with you apparently had like an anonymous Twitter account for a long time, right?
Yeah, it was
not Larry Fink.
Yeah, that was fun, man. And I that was part of the rabbit hole, was like, leading up to, because I made that account in like 2023, I think. It was like 2 months before Larry Fink came out and like professed his love for Bitcoin and said that BlackRock was going to launch the spot ETF, because that was in like June of 23. So I had made that account in like April or May, because I was like, I can't believe nobody has this handle of not Larry Fink. And going down that rabbit hole, like I said, of studying how like really the world works, and you realize that BlackRock sets the trends for finance and Larry Fink's at the head of all of this. I was like, how does nobody have this handle? So I made like a laser-eyed, not Larry Fink account, but it was not Larry Fink. So it was funny, man. I had so many people fooled with it. Like, one funny one is, and I hate to put him on blast, but Hunter Horsley from Bitwise actually DM'd me and was like, "Who the hell are you? Are you Larry Fink?" And I played around with it for a little bit before, like, obviously, like I was like, I'll never get this guy's time and attention again. So I like spilled my guts to him. Never heard back from him again, but it was all good. But it was fun, man. I mean, that thing got a lot of attention, and it was a good way to like really interact, because I had been on Twitter like before you actually had to create a profile, and I just literally creeped on like hundreds of people and kind of narrowed it down to like 10 or 20 people who really knew what the hell they were talking about. So from like 2017 to 2023, I narrowed that list down to like, what I would consider the brightest minds. In 2023, I think when Elon took over X, you had to create an account, so I couldn't just like creep anymore. So I made not Larry Fink, and it was a good introduction to like what ultimately ended up me getting the attention of Anthony Pompliano through DMs with my big idea. And I don't know if that would have happened if I didn't have like a convincing or kind of catchy Twitter handle that was a little bit convincing that maybe it was somebody important. So yeah.
Funny. And so how would you describe like your information journey coming from, your background, eventually getting into Bitcoin? Like what was kind of like your path of learning? Did you start with the question like, what is money? Or as you mentioned, the trading part, I can make money with this. Like what flipped it for you, where you went from, okay, this is an investment, to, in your context right now, like this is probably the most important thing I could dedicate my time and energy to? Like what was that moment for you where it kind of flipped?
That's a great question. So, I mean, I guess the flipping moment would be is when I figured out that Bitcoin had like real world utility, and it wasn't just like a digital thing on a screen that could go away, right? Like for me, it was really the Bitcoin mining side of it that helped, in my mind, tie it to the real world. Because without energy and electricity, you have no network to run the Bitcoin blockchain. So once I figured that out, which took me, I'll admit, at least like 1,000 hours of initial study. I mean, it took like a good year or two before I really understood what I'd bought and what I'd held. And then once I understood that and crossed that chasm, I was like, I need to get as much of this as I can. Because if there's only 21 million Bitcoin and there's 2.1 quadrillion Satoshis, and each one of these Satoshis is what I consider the most precious and scarce pieces of data that have ever been created. I'm like, I need to hoard as much of this as I can.
Bitcoin custody is evolving, and OnRamp is leading this change with multi-institution custody, eliminating single points of failure. Instead of relying on one institution, OnRamp secures your Bitcoin in a cold storage multi-sig vault backed by 3 independent custodians, where no single party can move your funds alone, providing an unprecedented level of security. Your assets are protected by a 100 million Lloyd's of London insurance policy, with all transactions fully auditable on-chain and only executed at your direction. This means complete transparency and control over your assets at all time. Beyond custody, OnRamp provides comprehensive Bitcoin services that include trading, lending, inheritance planning, and IRAs. You can view them as your private Bitcoin banking partner tailored to your wealth preservation goals. Whether you're new to Bitcoin or an experienced holder, OnRamp's approach helps you secure your generational wealth with unmatched security and peace of mind. You can sign up at onrampbitcoin.com and use code BRAM, that's BRAM, to receive $150 in Bitcoin after your first deposit. If you first want to learn more, you can also book a free consultation via their website to speak with one of their Bitcoin custody experts. Tell them you came through me, and they'll take extra good care of you. Bitcoin is financial sovereignty, so why compromise when you need liquidity? Meet Debify, the Bitcoin-backed lending platform made by Bitcoiners for Bitcoiners. Debify connects you to institutional-grade liquidity and allows you to borrow fiat or stablecoins, all while keeping your Bitcoin 100% under your control with a non-custodial 3 out of 4 multi-sig escrow solution. Get competitive rates from a global marketplace of institutional-grade lenders, with loan terms that you choose, from 1 month up to a year. There are no hidden fees and there is no rehypothecation, just pure Bitcoin-aligned lending with the highest level of transparency and security. Are you ready to unlock liquidity without ever selling a single sat? Go to debify.com/Bram, that's BRAM, to check out their current lending offers. That's debify.com/Bram.
For me, I've always been interested in, like, from a young age, like watching shows where people win the lottery, and it's just like, oh my God. And then like looking at how like Mark Cuban came up in like the .com boom and got like, you know, quote unquote lucky. But I consider luck is when like preparation and opportunity intersect. So for me, it's like, to become lucky, you need to see the writing on the wall before everybody else in a big sense. And like Bitcoin and crypto at that time in 2017 had that potential in my mind, where I'm like, this is kind of like a .com boom 2.0 in a way, but with money instead of just like stocks and companies, right? So I remember at that time I just bought a house, and making an ACH transfer took like an ungodly amount of time, like a couple weeks to transfer money. And I'm like, we're like almost 20 years past the year 2000 here. Like, what's the holdup? And then, you know, about that time, about 6 months later into like summer of 2017, that's when I stumbled upon crypto and Bitcoin. You know, from there, once the bear market came in 2018, I really tried to narrow down which was the best asset to focus my time, attention, and energy on. And when I saw that Bitcoin had not only the mining network that tied it to something tangible in real life, like electricity and energy, and also it had no centralized leader. And it was not the first of its kind, but it was like, if you look at all the different types of electronic based money, it's actually, you know, from the 70s on to 2008, it's actually like the final iteration, like the final product of, you know, really the best money for mankind. So once I kind of figured that out, and that's the beauty of bear markets, is if you're really interested in what you're what you bought and hopefully what you held, you start to learn it, because that gives you the time to learn it. So then you can hopefully buy at the bottom and then continue to accumulate and continue to learn. So for me, it was really many years of being consistent and learning this, and just really understanding this could change my life for the better financially. And it's just amazing in my life what it sprouted to today. So really, I guess to answer your question, what helped me cross the chasm was seeing that Bitcoin was so much different than any other asset that's ever been created, and that it has real world utility. And I mean, I feel like today I'm proving that, at least in concept, but I will make it a reality by showing that there is an economic incentive to create off-Earth energy grids because of Bitcoin mining and because of Satoshi's amazing immaculate conception of Bitcoin that also sprouted the Bitcoin mining industry. So yeah, it's been quite the journey. It's ever going. Every single day I learn something new. So, yeah, long story short.
I love that. The word I'm thinking about is perseverance, right? Because I think many people start with the number go up and, I can invest and make money. And then, of course, when it goes down, you sell and then you realize that was dumb because it goes back up again, right? Like, I mean, that's how it went for me.
Okay.
But at one point, and I've seen that with many people, right? They say like, hey, yeah, I got in, then it went like way down and everyone said it was dead. And then I didn't pay attention anymore. And then it went up and I was like, what is that, right? And people are, when you're curious enough, you'll get into this study as well. But also when you just have perseverance, right? It's like, no, I think I understand what this is. Like, this is not going down because it's a bad thing. It's going down because people don't understand it, and I want to understand it. So I'm going to, learn more. And I think it's interesting that there's an edge there, obviously. And then, when you're into Bitcoin, you start thinking about all the stuff surrounding Bitcoin, like you've been thinking about mining, and now you have a crazy idea to, use the abundant solar energy in the universe to mine Bitcoin. When did this hit you? Because it kind of sounds, this is not an easy feat, but in essence, it's a quite simplistic idea, no?
No, great way to put it. It was November 7th of 2024. I had the idea, and it was a couple days after the U.S. election. So you got to think about what the U.S. election did for Bitcoin. I mean, if it would have went the other way, man, we wouldn't be talking today, because Bitcoin would be in peril, crypto would be in peril, Bitcoin mining industry would be in peril, SpaceX would be getting hamstringed, to say the least. I mean, holy shit. Like, it is insane to me that because of what happened on the election, it really changed my mind about the future of Bitcoin. It was a huge crux in history for Bitcoin, because with Trump 2.0 getting in, they absolutely love the asset. Elon Musk, they love him too. So they're going to allow him to continue innovating with SpaceX and moving forward with Starship and helping get, payload into orbit and make it as cheap as possible. Like right now it's about $5,000 per kilogram, but that's going to drop 99% over the next decade at the current rate it's going. So, and also with Trump saying that we want to colonize on Mars, that has huge implications on expanding the space-based economy. And now that you can send payload into orbit cheaper, and as time goes on, that's going to continue to be the case. Bitcoin mining in space is going to make way more sense, especially at a time where Bitcoin's price is only going to continue to go up. So if space launch costs are going down, Bitcoin's price is going up. If I'm reading the writing on the wall correctly, this is going to be really economical within the next decade, and it's going to incentivize building out off-Earth energy grids. And basically, if you can mine Bitcoin in space, send that Bitcoin back to Earth, you've just created a transmission line of digital energy from space to Earth. So for me, that's a huge breakthrough from what I've understood, because to make a long story short here, NASA, European Space Agency, and other space agencies have looked into making orbital solar farms a reality, but only through energy transfer methods, which means you take the sun's energy in orbit, convert it to microwaves or laser beams, and send that to Earth. But you can only do that with like 10% efficiency. So if you take like 10 megawatts in space, you're only going to get 1 megawatt to Earth, and it's extremely unsafe. But with data transmission through Bitcoin mining, you can do that with 100% efficiency and 100% safety. So if I'm going to back it back up to the election, and what helped me come up with this idea was after the election, I was like, okay, Bitcoin's safe, like crypto's safe, Bitcoin mining's safe, SpaceX is safe. So when I tied this all together, there was a post that Elon Musk had on X around that time, which I think he was talking about like the Kardashev scale and how we can harness the sun's abundant energy. And, that should be our main source of energy consumption for Earth. But in that, he had an AI generated image that to me it looked like an orbital solar farm. And when I zoomed in on it, it was just a satellite, which, I mean, what a blonde moment, right? But it helped spur the idea to me. I'm like, if you can put an orbital solar farm in space, can you monetize that, endless stranded solar energy in orbit into Bitcoin and send that Bitcoin back to Earth? And can you cool these machines using the cold vacuum of space? So once I really got to thinking about it, I literally still have the note in my phone that's pages long that literally was titled "To Elon." And I wrote out, this idea that I had and how to make it a reality. Like it just hit me. I'm like, oh my God, all these tens of thousands of hours of studying I've been doing combined with my work career as a refinery operator hit ahead all at once after the election, the 2 days after the election. And I sent that big idea out to like 10 or 20 people on Twitter, and Anthony Pompliano was like the only one to get back to me. And he wrote a life-changing Substack article for me, which God bless his heart. He's the man. And it's funny because talk about full circle moment. Him and Mark Yusko were the ones that initially orange pilled me. Then, I discovered, Anthony, I guess, in a way. Years went by. Then he, I guess, discovered me and my idea, and then, just helped me out. So it's really awesome to see that there's good people in the world like that, even at a big stature like that are willing to help out somebody as little as me just because they want to help, right? So that's very cool. Yeah, it is. And I'll end it with this, but like, the one thing I can say about the Bitcoin community is like, it's so nice because everybody wants to learn and everybody wants to help, like no matter what position they're in. And I just hope that I can pay it forward in due time as well.
Yeah, I think it's dope. So you reached out to different people. I will link to I will look it up. I will link to Pom's article in the show notes so people can read it.
Thank you.
Maybe I pitched the idea already in a bit, but could you maybe explain like a bit further, like the core idea? So why should we be mining Bitcoin in space with stranded solar energy there? Not on Earth? Like, what are your thoughts around that?
Great question. So to me, if you ask me, there's a lot more productive uses for land on Earth, like agriculture and housing. So to me, if you want to lower the cost of food, start, planting more crops, start raising more livestock, have the room to do that, right? For housing, if you want to get housing cheaper, right? Build more houses. Don't be putting all this, like, especially renewable energy generation that takes a lot of land mass, if you look in outer space, you already have that abundance of solar energy from the sun. It's never going away in our lifetime. You have the abundance of cooling up there to cool these machines. So to me, it's like if you look at all the infrastructure that's about to come online with AI really hitting a stride right now and is really energy intensive and really like needs a lot of cooling as well, so a lot of water. You look at outsourcing this out into space, it makes perfect sense, especially now that Starlink is more of a prevalent thing. Now you can have low latency internet connection between Earth and outer space. So for me, if a good comparison would be, look at like renewable energy generation on Earth. And when there's a good example, there was a wind farm down in like Texas that couldn't be hooked up to the grid for like 5 years just because there was such a backlog of trying to create the infrastructure. So it sat there constructed for 5 years, not making any money. So think about it like this. If you could have employed Bitcoin miners to that site day one, you could have at least made money and made that profitable for 5 years before it actually got hooked up to the grid. So if you look at employing Bitcoin miners into space and you want to grow the off-Earth energy grid immediately, Bitcoin mining, you can apply that same logic into space where you can start making that economical and making money and compound and grow on that and grow these energy grids bigger and bigger and bigger, and reap the rewards by sending that Bitcoin mine back to Earth and making money on it, so you can actually make space-based solar power part of the energy grid or the energy mix for your country, right? So that's like extremely novel, and there was never an economic incentive to do that before, but now there is, and it's all because Satoshi created Bitcoin, and the Bitcoin mining industry has an effect of it. I mean, this is huge. Anybody who now says that Bitcoin's like vaporware, has no real world utility, try to argue what I just said, right? So to me, that's a very novel thing, and there's going to be that incentive, and that incentive right now is like it's in its very beginning stages. But like I said, as Bitcoin price inevitably goes up over time, because Satoshi created money that is literally programmed to go up in value forever over a long time scale, because the demand is ever so growing as the supply mined is getting cut in half every 4 years. So it has to correct upwards in price. Not saying there won't be corrections, but if you look at a long enough time scale, it's literally going up forever, Laura. Like fucking Michael Saylor. Like, he's totally right when he says that. So it's like, I mean, you look at it that way, and it's like, okay, when you look at the writing on the wall, it's like, this is, if you employ Bitcoin miners into space, you can make space-based solar power economically viable over time. And this is going to change the course of history and help expand the space-based economy, because everything in life is about incentives, right? There's no sense in doing anything unless there's a good economic incentive to do it, at least business speak, right? So this is something I've never heard talked about before, and I just hope to get the word out more. And with you giving me this platform, I mean, I just hope it kind of creates a little bit of a snowball effect.
And so how would it work? How do you send the energy back to Earth? I think that's one question I have. And the other one is it correct if I say it's kind of similar as when you talk about like the use case for wind energy, right? Like you see all these windmills, and sometimes, or many times actually, they are not even turning when the wind is blowing, right? And so I think there is also a really clear business case. If you want to have 100% ROI from the investment in all these windmills, you would want to have them turn whenever the wind blows, obviously. But if there are no if there's no ask for the generated energy, then you obviously should put it into Bitcoin miners, right? So I think like that business case is interesting. Like how do you translate the business case to doing it in space with solar energy? Like what is the combination here, or the advantage?
Well, the advantage is you have 24/7 energy from the sun if you go into sun synchronous orbit. In geostationary orbit, you'll get 23 hours of sunlight, an hour of dark. Low Earth orbit, you'll get 18 hours of sunlight, 6 hours of dark. So I mean, take solar energy on Earth and like the sunniest part of the world, you'll be lucky to get 18 hours of sunlight. In low Earth orbit, you're guaranteed to get that if you do this correctly from an engineering standpoint, a cost standpoint. So, the ultimate goal would be to put it into sun synchronous orbit, but the further away you get from Earth, the higher latency you're going to have. So you want to have low latency, but also as much energy from the sun and space as you can get, because that's more uptime for your mining operation. Unless you want to employ batteries also with it, but that adds more weight. So there's a lot of trade-offs with this. So the most ideal thing would be putting into sun synchronous orbit. You wouldn't have any batteries. This would run incessantly 24/7, 365. You can relay this Bitcoin, the blockchain syncing in data through Starlink. And that will provide you low latency internet connection to compete with mining pools, right? So really your biggest overhead as a Bitcoin miner is your energy costs on Earth, right? So to get this up into space, you have an initial construction cost and launch cost, right? But once you get it up there and this runs reliably, you have free energy, you have free cooling, essentially, right? So those are two humongous bottlenecks on Earth right now. If you ask any Bitcoin miner, what's your two biggest bottlenecks? They're going to say energy and cooling, by far. So putting this up into space solves those two major issues.
If you want to self-custody your Bitcoin stack, I recommend the Blockstream Jade Plus. I've been using this premium Bitcoin-only hardware wallet for a few months now, and I love its design and ease of use. What makes it stand out is its open source hardware and software, and Blockstream's unique genuine check, which makes sure that your device is authentic. No backdoors or compromises. You can connect with the Jade Plus however you want. Bluetooth, USB-C, or you can go fully air-gapped with its built-in camera for cable-free QR transactions. The metal case feels solid and the color screen is easy to read. And it connects with your favorite Bitcoin apps like Blockstream Green, Sparrow, and Electrum. Get your Jade Plus today at store.blockstream.com and use code BRAM to get 10% of your entire order. Let's talk about something that not a lot of people think about before it's too late. Where are you storing your Bitcoin seed words? Are they truly secure? I found my solution with StampSeed. It's an elegant all-in-one titanium plate solution with no separate pieces to lose or manage. Your seed phrase gets permanently stamped into pure titanium that withstands fire, survives water, and lasts for generations. Unlike shallow etching methods, StampSeed's patented tools help you to deeply stamp every letter for permanent readability, protecting your financial legacy. When you order a titanium seed plate from StampSeed, you can also upload a custom design or your logo to customize the back of your plate to make it fully personalized. Paper seed phrases are a disaster waiting to happen. Secure your Bitcoin with StampSeed for decades to come. Visit stampseed.com and use code BRAM, that's BRAM, to get 15% off your order. Love that. All right, so you had this download of the idea. You put it in your phone. You have this huge note. You send it to many different people. Like who did you reach out to? And so no one replied. Just Pomp.
You know, there was a small handful of people that gave me like good feedback. They weren't necessarily willing to, I guess, help push it further. But there was like 5 people that responded back and were like, wow, I've never thought of that before. Like, that's a really cool idea. But like Anthony Pompliano was like, this is a very interesting idea. Like, we need to get on a Zoom call. And I was like, holy shit, like this is happening.
Yeah.
So the list of people, oh man, I would have to find it. Just in order to not like waste a ton of time. I'll leave some people in suspense, I guess. It's a good question that you have, but I can't remember all of them. Yeah, Anthony Pompliano was like the one that actually took the initiative to like be like, you know, I'm really interested in this idea. It's a good idea, and I want to like help you out and write an article about it. Are you okay with that? And I'm like, you got my full blessing, man. This is amazing. So nice. I mean, that from there spurred so much attention that came my way. I mean, I was absolutely swamped busy for the first 5 months of this year. It's like recently kind of slowed down a little bit, which has been nice because it allowed me to work on like a handful of patents that I have pending now, which I've dumped tens of thousands of dollars of my own money into. So yeah, I mean, it's been quite the year, Bram. You're running into me at a very unique point in my life.
Nice. So what's next? What was the response, and what did you do with it, and where are you now?
Okay, so after Anthony dropped that article on December 23rd of 2024, the crazy thing is he does like a daily Substack letter, but like, God, what a badass he is. He left that thing up there all throughout the holidays, like from the 23rd of December past New Year's. I mean, and he has, you know, not only does he have like 1.7 million followers on Twitter, but he's got like 260,000 paid subscribers on Substack. So, I mean, my DMs blew up with venture capital interest from all over the world. I mean, it's a world that I was not privy to before, but it was like another baptism by fire of just trying to understand how that world works. And It's been a lot of fun. I've learned a lot, but I mean, current day, I mean, I have a handful of verbal commitments that add up into the 7 figures to make this a reality based on one contingency of finding a co-founder that has experience building satellites, which I have no problem with because I'm not afraid to admit what I do and don't know. I know I have the aptitude to literally build one of these in my garage if I have to. Like, I'm not joking. I've been doing a ton of research and study with my 10 years of experience as a refinery operator, fixing, 10,000 horsepower compressors, fixing, instrumentation, heavy electrical substations, and, working with, cryogenic refrigeration processes and tearing those apart and putting them back together. I mean, if that's the only contingency I need to fulfill, that's low hanging fruit for me. Like, I've just been continuing to move forward on like putting these inventions that are on paper and making them official, but then having that be the blueprint to what I actually create with the right co-founder. I wouldn't be surprised if I had some really big news for you, like in the next, handful of months, as far as like making this a reality. Hopefully I answered your question.
No, I understand if you cannot share everything yet, but man, what I take from it and what I really like, because I've experienced it in similar ways, is just like once you have an idea and you just lean into it and you just download the information that's given to you, right? I mean, this is not an easy feat, but conceptually, it's just really clear. You know what I mean? And that's in my experience how you can recognize a good, let's call them concepts, not ideas, right? But good concepts is like, okay, it's pretty clear what you're sharing. It's not going to be easy, like launching a solar farm in space, but it makes a lot of sense. And I think it's interesting also when, if we connect it to Bitcoin and the discussion around Bitcoin mining and the profitability in the future, which on one side I think is a healthy discussion because, you're projecting, or just in general, Bitcoiners are projecting the current state of mining towards the future. And then they say like, okay, this could be in some way problematic if the price doesn't rise enough. But I mean, once you get to the point where you realize, okay, fiat money is, mathematically going to zero. In essence, it is worth zero, right?
Yep.
And Bitcoin is absolutely finite. And over time, more people will realize, just as people have done in history, that there is a stronger, if not the strongest money to ever exist. And people are going to move there. So the value of Bitcoin or a unit of Bitcoin are going to go up tremendously, right? And so even if a Bitcoin miner is earning, I don't know what the block reward is going to be in 40 years, right? But like 0 point something Bitcoin, right? You can project. You can project towards the future from your current understanding, and then say, oh well, it should be like worth a lot, right? But on the other side, I do think, if it's not going to be worth that much, then Bitcoin is a failure. I see it as Bitcoin is either zero or it is that everything, the black hole of value, the measurement of value in the world. There's not really an in between. But to connect it to what you're doing, I love that you're approaching it from, I'd say, in essence, the cost perspective, right? And just thinking about what you just explained. Okay, how can I put solar panels in a place where there's just always sun? And getting them there is going to be expensive and hard. But once they're there, they are just running, right?
Yeah,
Am I understanding it like that? Yeah.
You are. So yeah, I mean, that's the interesting part is that, on Earth, you do have like the price of construction, but the price of construction to put spacecraft in outer space is considerably more than building a warehouse on Earth and putting your miners in there. But you got to look at the economics of it. Is your electricity cost is going to be a big suck on your wallet, right, on Earth. But up in space, once you overcome the initial cost of construction and launch, You're not paying for that energy, and that's like your biggest overhead on Earth, right? And I want to touch back on what you said about like if Bitcoin's either going to go to zero or it's going to infinity. As long as there is no bottom to fiat money printing, so you look at like the math equation I put on Twitter from time to time is like, what's infinity divided by 21 million? That's Bitcoin's future price, right? So if you look at it that way, it's going up forever. It's crazy to say, because like when you look at like what Michael Saylor says about like Bitcoin being like 43, what do you say, like $43 million or $13 million a coin, and like by 2040 or 2050, you know, when you think about that, it just sounds insane. But when you look at how much money and value is floating around out there now, divide by 21 million, and you know that over time that central banks are only going to continue to print money infinitely forever, Bitcoin's price keeps the score, right? So you can see as like M2 money supply is growing, Bitcoin absorbs those expansions over time. So like I totally agree with you that Bitcoin is like literally going up forever. Like it would not shock me if Bitcoin was in the seven figures in the 2030 decade. So if you look at that incentive that's going to bring to like put more mining hash rate online, and you try to look for the lowest hanging fruit, because one huge bottleneck right now that I didn't mention, well, I guess maybe I did, is that the transmission lines, at least in America, are like so far beyond their lifespan that we can continue putting more energy generation online with like nuclear and all that. But if you can't have a safe way to transmit that energy to the destination it needs to go, there's going to be time needed to replace all that. So what's going to be quicker, doing that or just starting to move to the next frontier of putting this compute in space, where you already have the ingredients of, you know, abundant energy and abundant cooling? I mean, and then also with allowing SpaceX to keep cooking and Blue Origin to keep cooking, and like, you know, making, you know, more, you know, steps towards innovating to make launch costs cheaper and get more satellites into orbit, more compute in orbit. You know, to me, that seems like the logical next step. That's where I want to take my next step towards, because it makes perfect sense to me. And you're looking at like also like Axiom Space and Orbital Reef, and like also VAST, which is ran by Jed McCaleb, who created Stellar XLM token. I don't know if you knew all this, but he's like, with VAST, he's creating private space stations in space that are going to be launched before the end of the decade. So you're looking at like this proliferation of privatized space stations and like private commercial things going into space. Putting Bitcoin miners into space is, you know, whether I was going to do it or whether I ever thought of it or not, it was inevitably going to happen or will happen or was going to happen in the next, I would say, less than a decade, because it makes too much sense. It really does. It just took somebody to like put the pieces together, which I guess I'll take credit for, and articulate it as such that, hey, this solves the 50-year-old riddle that NASA's finest has been trying to figure out for 50 years now. How do we make orbital solar farms in space economically viable and profitable? Well, if you can't do it by taking the sun's energy and beaming it to Earth, unsafely, by the way, then you got to basically put computers into space, utilize that energy created in space on site, convert it into something valuable like data. And if you look at the most valuable pieces of data, Satoshis, so Bitcoin. So you mine Bitcoin with, you know, the energy of the sun and utilizing the abundant cooling of space, and then sending that Bitcoin back to Earth. So you essentially have created, like I said, a database transmission line of digital energy from space to Earth. Like, you're basically deriving Bitcoin from space and saying it to Earth. It's absolutely nuts, but like it makes perfect sense, at least in theory and on paper. To take this to the next level, the proof of concept has got to be proven. Like, got to build a pilot satellite, get it up into orbit, and prove this thing, and that's going to, I think, really start like a space race 2.0, if you ask me. When there's an incentive, there's a way. and it makes sense, people are going to flock to it and do it, and it's going to compound. And yeah, I think in hindsight, it's going to seem really obvious that space makes the most sense to mine Bitcoin in, because you have those two abundant sources, so energy and cooling.
Yeah, I love it. I think maybe there's something I'm wondering. Is there a way? I love how you described that you basically synthesized stuff together, right? Like just existing old ideas, combining that with Bitcoin, right? And eventually attaching that business case to it. Like, is there a way for you to build this also like in an open source way, or do the satellites or the farm, is that proprietary tech, or is there also already something available that you could use or piece together? Like, do you have to invent this, or can you synthesize the actual product as well?
From my experience, you got to invent it. Because what I found out is that nobody's invented something like this in the US, at least. I guess if you want to go into something that's a little less novel, that could be done. But if you ask me, anything can happen. I mean, like, if you look at the International Space Station, and this is something I talked about, in a podcast back in January, but if you look at the International Space Station, they are the largest producer of space-based solar power, and they are also the largest consumer. So if you look at it this way, there's already talks about the International Space Station becoming deorbited and destroyed well before its lifetime in like the year 2031. I honestly think there's some low-hanging fruit there and a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to put Bitcoin miners in the International Space Station, considering they already have the energy infrastructure, they already have the cooling infrastructure. It is ripe for the private sector to take advantage of. Why are we crashing this into the ocean? Why are we deorbiting and letting it burn up into the atmosphere and letting the rest crash into the ocean? It seems like a giant waste to me. Why not make something useful out of it, right? And that would be one hell of a way to prove the concept. And I think with the bright minds on Twitter and how much influence Bitcoiners do have on Twitter, and especially, Elon Musk is on there all the time. I think if this idea crossed his eyes and he gave it some thought, knowing what he knows, I can't see him saying no to that. Because it seems like he has a lot of influence, obviously, in politics these days with Trump 2.0. So I think probably somebody more important than me would have to put the bug in his ear. But I'm always going to be that annoying mosquito about it on Twitter, continuing to push it and continue to put the idea out there. Because if you look at something else about the International Space Station, in 2028, Russia is backing out of its commitment. So there's like a vacancy there. If you ask me, it's a good place to start. Where, if you look at the biggest cost right now would be constructing it and launching this into space. Well, shit, the International Space Station's already up there. You just got to get the miners up there, and from what I understand, the heavy electrical is already there. You already have the infrastructure there, and you have the cooling there too. Put the miners in there, prove the proof of concept by getting it hooked up to fast internet, which the International Space Station already has. You have all the ingredients there to do this without having to pay an arm and a leg. So to me, if you don't do it from a novel invention, you got to go with something that's already established and up there, and that's it, man. Like that would be the big that's the prize right there.
What I really love is it's just the thought. Many people don't like this, I think, but just the thought, like, you can just do things. You can just do it. And what I've kind of learned, and I know you're a bit spiritual too, and I think I've talked about this before, but I really believe that, like, all the information that has existed or will exist, everything exists already, in the whole quantum thing. And like, when you have an idea, it's you receiving that at that moment in time.
Wow, you speak my language, Bram. Please continue.
Okay, cool.
Please continue.
So that's why multiple people can have the same idea, right? But the idea in itself isn't worth anything. You can only manifest it. You can only create it in the reality if you do something with it, right? And I think I don't know how it is for you. I've had thousands of ideas, right? And many things that I, the 99.9% that I didn't do anything with it. But there have been multiple ideas that other people actually did do something with. I remember having a startup idea like 12 years ago or something. It was about secondhand ticket sales, and we failed miserably. We worked on it for 3 months and then it didn't work out. And then like 4 years later, a startup launched, which is now the biggest platform in my country for secondhand e-ticket sales. And they had all the features, like the exact same spec as what we came up with, right?
Oh my God.
And that really taught me, yeah, it's fun. But that really taught me that the idea isn't worth anything. It's like once you start doing something, you gather information, or even talking about it is doing something, right? Like you put it out there, people hear it, like what happened with you and Pomp, and people reply. You get to know more people, and then the thing is taking shape. And I think it's just really cool that you can do that. So whenever you have an idea, even if you're like sitting on your couch and it's 11:30 p.m. and like an idea hits you, if you think like, oh, that's a great idea. Yeah, I'm going to think about it in the morning. No. Like you should write it down. Like just totally lean into it. Even writing it down is a part of manifesting it, right? Because you're putting it on something. And then when you look at it in the morning, or maybe that's how you did it when you typed in your notes, right? Like a few hours later, if you just open up again to this idea, like all the information will eventually come to you, but you have to do something with it. And so I think it would be just so sick if you could pull this off, right? Because that's a great example, I think, of what I just said. Like once you just lean into an idea and you just go for it, you keep talking about it. Then Nick Moran is the guy that is going to put, Bitcoin miners into space. Yeah, you're doing that. So I think it's just nice to share that. Also, something I think is like the action is the inspiration. The fact that you're doing it, I think that's why I'm reflecting on it, to kind of emphasize that, because I really believe that like the action is the inspiration for anyone else to do their idea, whatever the idea is that they get in their head.
Yeah, no, well said, man. I'll hit you with something deep. So if you look at this, so if it is in fact a fact that energy can only be created, not destroyed, who is to say that the energy from our beating hearts that create, the creative juices in our brain that allow us to have thoughts and then project that energy out from our vocal cords into the universe, that sound can never be destroyed because that's energy created. So
yes,
with me having, with me being alive, creating that energy from my beating heart, having the idea of Bitcoin mining in space, and then, first typing it onto my phone and getting that energy out there and sending that digitally to people and getting that idea into their head where they start talking about it. And then I come on a podcast like this where I'm talking about it and then people listen to it. It creates that flywheel snowball effect of the energy gaining momentum, and to the point where this Bitcoin mining in space is going to become a reality. So no, that's the way I think about it, man. I love what you said. It really resonated.
I fully align with that. I think that is why, I am trying to meme into existence, don't stop talking about Bitcoin. It's the same principle. It's the same principle. Yeah, I love that. And I think it's also the enthusiasm and like the genuine interest or care that I see with you, and I think I have for this, and that many people have with their idea. Like that is needed, right? Like you cannot manifest something in reality if you don't do it with like the loving attention that you have, because that is what will resonate as what you're saying, right? Like that is what triggers people. Like, okay, wow, this guy is really serious about putting up a satellite. Maybe I should pay attention to what he's saying.
It's the inspiration, right? I mean, I want to inspire people to like talk about this and also be able to put their creative mind into this. And if they want to help, I'm more than open to. I'm not like secretive about this, aside from like the inventions that are pending. But like, if anybody wants to chip in and help, I mean, the one thing I've always seen with the Bitcoin community is that everybody wants to open source everything. And I love that, because then everybody gets to learn and everybody gets to contribute and everybody gets to like play a part. And like, that gives meaning to people's lives. And if you ask me, fixing money for mankind is a big motherfucking deal. It is huge. I mean, to separate money from state and just take the power away from historically people who don't have everybody else's best interest. Like Bitcoin itself inherently has everybody's best interest at heart, because anybody who plugs in a Bitcoin miner can start printing money right away. Anybody who buys Bitcoin can transact however the hell they want. It's just, really giving the freedom back to the people, and that creates optimism and excitement because you're not living in an oppressive regime. So to me, it solves so many issues. I think as time goes on, it just becomes more and more apparent why Bitcoin's needed and why it is a positive for the world. So yeah, we all might be like toxic Bitcoin maximalists, but I think all of us come from a good place. And I think a lot of it is just being misunderstood for a long time. Because if you look at the mainstream, narrative of Bitcoin for the longest time, you would have thought that only criminals used it. But then once you actually get to learning about it, you find out that's actually really just mainly good, well-intentioned people that just want to get away from having their hard-earned money debased by their central banks or governments, right? So this just gives power back to the people in a lot of ways, and that's something I can stand behind. I think that's something that a lot of people can stand behind for sure.
Yeah, I agree. So if you succeed, you are not just changing Bitcoin or space-based solar, you're potentially changing how humanity accesses energy forever. So how optimistic are you that this is going to work? Or maybe even what's your timeline?
Okay, so before I answer that question, I just want to say that I love what you just said, by the way, but I do believe that this provides the next, the foundational step to make Bitcoin the universe's reserve currency and the first interplanetary money. Like if we're going to be colonizing on Mars and having people basically go out into space and hang out in private space stations, they're going to need a way to transact. And Bitcoin, especially to get Bitcoin mining up into space and also like on the moon and Mars as well. You'll have this network established up there where it's going to be really the only logical thing that makes sense to have as a monetary network, an interplanetary monetary network, universal reserve currency. So if you ask me a timeline here, if you look at, one company I have to give a lot of credit to, and you need to look them up, is StarCloud. They're putting data centers into space starting in August this summer, and I've gotten in touch with their CEO, Philip Johnston. He's been a really good resource for me. His accolades are really impressive, and he is, StarCloud's mainly focused on putting AI data centers and servers into space on behalf of, like Microsoft, Google, and all them. But where I'm focusing my time, attention, and energy towards is putting Bitcoin miners into space to monetize stranded solar energy in orbit, because that's just never been done before. So if you want a good case study there, they're already laying the foundational groundwork. And I wouldn't be shocked if they put Bitcoin miners into space either around the same time I do or even before. So I'll preface with that. But if you ask me the time frame for them, it seems like basically in less than a year to 5 years, definitely before the end of the decade. So if you look at my time frame that I've given in previous podcasts, I think 2028 is, and I hate to overpromise and underdeliver, but 2028 seems to be the soonest that I could be like, yeah, I think in 3 years from now, I'm going to make immense headway. The patents will be approved. I will find the co-founder and build a team. I will have more headway made on this to where this isn't as daunting of a task as it was even months ago. It's getting easier over time. So if you look at like Bitcoin mining on Earth and you look at, the 2028 halving, you usually see the hash rate dip after the halving because old miners go offline because they're less profitable and they have the logistics of putting new miners online. So there's actually like a good opportunity to get in that nook to take advantage of making more money because hash rate dips. And the nice thing about putting this compute into space is that because you have essentially infinite energy and abundant cooling, even older miners, as time goes on, can stay profitable. Where on Earth, as the energy overhead gets more and more expensive and they get essentially put into obsolescence because they can't make money, you don't have that problem in space. So to me, if you look at like 2028, the halving, you also look at like the International Space Station and Russia backing out its commitment. There's an opening there. But also, I would say no later than 2032. So if you ask me, time frame 2028 to 2032. But if StarCloud decides to also incorporate Bitcoin mining and not just data centers, they could very well beat me to the punch, which I'm totally cool with. Like, I would just love to see this happen because I understand it's like a bigger thing for humanity moving forward. This isn't like a selfish thing that I want. I mean, I selfishly want to see it happen, but like, I want it for the betterment of humanity because it's going to, anything that pushes Bitcoin forward is going to continue to fix money for humanity and change people's minds and how they see the world for the better, where they can become more independent thinkers and like really protect the money they earn, which is their hard work denominated in whatever currency they have. Putting your money into Bitcoin is always a worth it thing if you just have a long time horizon. You will never be able to protect your purchasing power any better. So if this can help advance Bitcoin into being the universe's reserve currency and interplanetary money, I'm just thankful to play a part in that. Like, to me, it's a huge honor and it just feels like a blessing in a lot of ways. But yeah, so I think before the end of this decade, you're going to see something tangible where you're going to see Bitcoin mining in space being proven. So before 2030, we'll just give you that short answer.
Should be fun. I mean, this is kind of what I just said, right? Like this, you are working on that idea from your point of view, your background, your perspective, how you think it should be done, and others are working on it in their way, and eventually that is symbiotic, I would say, because the whole goal is the same, right? And I think that is just in general very positive, and I love how you reflect on that because I think that's probably the best way to look at it, don't you think?
Yeah, I agree.
Like, how else?
No. You said it well because it was funny. Once Anthony put out the article, I actually had a few people hit me with like some older like tweets from like Peter Todd and like Max Kaiser, briefly mentioning like Bitcoin mining in space, but they never elaborated on it. And I wish they did, because obviously they were thinking about it. Like, I want to say it was like 2017 to 2023, like just brief little iterations, but nobody ever described it as something that, could solve the 50-year-old riddle of making space-based solar power like economically viable, or it's like solving this major issue. It was always like this pie in the sky sci-fi type thing, but I feel like I'm the first person to actually articulate it to be like, hey, we can make this work and this can be a viable business. And I'm out there raising money from VCs to make this a reality. And I have patents pending on orbital blockchain mining platforms like satellites and spacecrafts and different ways to like, incorporate thermal radiation, like novel methods to make sure you can like actually cool this compute in space. That actually makes 100% sense from an engineering standpoint. I wish that they would have dug deeper into that, because then you fast forward to today, we could have had a lot more progress. Like, obviously you probably wouldn't know of me at all, but like, it would have been really cool to see in that amount of time how much further this could have moved along. Because I think what's really sparked the idea today is that if you're looking at it from like a logical perspective, you're looking at like, okay, what's the largest like cost of doing this? For the longest time, it was space launch cost. It just like until SpaceX launched basically rockets into space, like a kid launches a million bottle rockets on the 4th of July. Like, nobody really gave it much serious thought because it just wasn't like really feasible or tangible. But now, like, with how the election went down and how SpaceX is, continuing to move forward at a rapid pace of getting, payload into orbit, like cheaper and cheaper and cheaper as time goes on, now this idea is being taken more seriously, and I just happened to stumble upon it at the right time. So like, I'm a firm believer in everything happening for a reason. It's just how I am. But like, I am just glad that I can articulate it in a way that hopefully makes sense. Like, I can take a complex idea and like simplify it for people to understand. And then once they get their understanding of it, they can come up with their own iterations of it. Because I'm all about having competition. Like, I just want to see this happen. So yeah, I mean, like you said, like there's a lot of different people thinking about a lot of different ideas at the same time. But if it can like coalesce into one thing where it's like this big productive push forward for the betterment of everybody, like that's the way to go. Yeah.
Yeah. I love it. So what keeps you up at night?
More things than you want to know, Bram. Bitcoin price lately, man, it's amazing. Following it for 8 years now, you know, from the point where it was under $1,000, where now it's like almost up to $112,000 US, man. It's pretty surreal, man. And just, I mean, I'm not even kidding. I've followed Bitcoin and Bitcoin's price every single day, 4 to 5 hours a day, since the summer of 2017 to this very moment. It's just unreal to see how much has changed, not only price wise, but all these new players coming out, like the spot ETFs, nation states, people like Sailor really getting in there and showing like the Bitcoin treasury strategy, and all these like, you know, Bitcoin miners coming in and showing how you can clean up the environment by like employing Bitcoin miners because they're location agnostic and flexible load capacity. You can take these Bitcoin miners to like upstream oil fields where they don't have natural gas collection infrastructure and like monetize that stranded energy into digital gold, and take it to like landfills that are emitting methane and turn that stranded energy into digital gold. Like, watching all this play out over time has just been absolutely amazing. And I guess it's just like really the genius of Bitcoin, and seeing its price, you know, actually correct to where I think it should be is what keeps me up at night. What keeps you up at night, man?
I'm sleeping very well, to be honest.
Good for you.
Yeah, baby keeps me up sometimes.
I had a feeling you were going to say that.
Yeah. So yeah, man, to wrap up. So looking ahead, what is the one thing that you hope people remember about, you know, this conversation, your mission, your story, anything that you hope resonates with other people?
That's a good question. The one thing that comes to mind is you really miss all the shots in life you don't take. Like, if I would have had, you know, I had the idea of Bitcoin mining in space November 7th of last year. If I would have just kept that to myself, we wouldn't even be talking today. It's amazing to me the butterfly effect of, or I guess even the domino effect in a way of like what can happen in life when you just take action and do things, like you're saying. Like, you just do things. And it's amazing the people you'll run into and the opportunities in life that'll open up for you. Just work hard, believe in something. Don't be afraid to ask stupid questions. Reach out to people. You'd be surprised. People really want to help. And that's something I've really noticed with this journey over the last 5 months, is that everybody that, you know, hears me talk about this idea face to face, like you and I are, it creates excitement. People want to help and people want to like contribute. And it just reminds me that like to be less pessimistic in life, be more optimistic. People really do want to help. Like, if you pass along the optimistic energy, it does compound. And it is a betterment for humanity if you just, you know, spread that positive, good energy. So yeah, man.
Love that. Well, the action is the inspiration, right? As we talked about.
Sir.
So I think that is what you're saying here. And yeah, I couldn't agree more, obviously. All right. So the last question, and I ask everyone the same question, which is, what is a core belief that you will never let go?
I think I just gave that to you. Core belief, and man, I know I already said this, but everything in life I believe happens for a reason. Nothing is a coincidence. Maybe that's just me looking too deeply into everything, but you know, I really think that everybody's put on earth for a reason, and everybody has a purpose. And if you can channel your time, focus, and energy into something productive, you will be rewarded in due time if you have that perseverance, like you had mentioned, right? Having that perseverance, hard work, dedication towards something that gives you meaning in life. Like, if you haven't found it yet, continue working hard and have that optimism that, good things can and will happen in your life. You just have to believe and understand that everything does happen for a reason, and that if something bad happens in your life, there can't be peaks without valleys, right? So if you can get through like the hard times in life, there are better things on the other end. The grass does get greener on the other side, and I'm living proof of that.
Awesome, man. Well, thanks so much for sharing. Thanks so much for sharing your idea and your mission and your journey. And I'm going to follow you with attention, and I hope it's going to work out. And if you have big updates in the future, then definitely come back so we can tell everyone.
Oh, thank you, Bram. I really appreciate it. And thank you for having me on today. This has been fun.
Likewise, man. Cheers. Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, you can click here to find more just like it, and click here to find all Bitcoin for Millennials podcast episodes. Also, please like this video if you want to help shine a light on the message of Bitcoin, and subscribe to my channel to stay connected. I hope to see you for a next episode. Bye.